Okay, hi and welcome back. So if you've seen the video previous to this about the AC-15 getting the blue, you'll know what speaker this is going to go. We have the Greenback down there, which is going to go in the back of the Blackstar. Now, there is a Blackbird 50 in here, and if I was to describe that, it is basically their attempt on a Celestion Vintage 30, but on an extreme budget. So there's a clarity there that's absolutely lacking. A lot of people describe it as sort of putting a carpet in front of it, and it's not that, but it's almost as if you're watching the same program, but instead of being HD, which we're all used to, now having to watch it on a CRT TV. And well, you can imagine how bad that is nowadays. So we are going to take care of it. We're not going to put in the same sound. We're going to put in more of a vintage rock sound. Um, and we are going to use this sort of Eddie Van Halen style, sort of on the cheap. I run this almost exclusively on the American setting. So anybody familiar with this, I don't even know if this will pick up on the camera, but the IFS switch can sort of take you from a British sound to an American sound. So I'll run this with a sort of an American 5150 Mesa-Dual Rec faux tone as the dry, and then I'll put the Jubilee in as the wet. It ends up filling the room incredibly well at a very low volume. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the speaker change. The other nice thing is the speaker on this is 100 dB sensitivity. The speaker going into it is 98. I'll have a little more play now with the volume knob, and it won't be so loud, so sudden. So that'll be good. Oh, one more thing. This is an early Blackstar. This does not have the digital reverb that a lot of the other ones had. And when those came, so did micro circuitry on the boards. Now, Blackstar has now since stopped making new boards and is almost impossible to fix if something got burned. If you have one of the very, very early models with basically, just parts that you can put on, um, then it is much more fixable. However, I don't know that until again, chassis is pulled to get to the speaker because hashtag new amp, just like new car, all safety. Back in a bit. Now, quickly before I get into this, one thing I did notice that there is clearly a different size screw. It's going to lead me to believe that one of them is most likely going to be a wood screw, whereas these are probably going to be machine screws holding the chassis in place. So what I'm going to do is make sure the speaker is disconnected. I'm going to take out the wood screws. I'm going to leave the chassis ones on and just see if it starts to come out, and the chassis might actually come out on the panel. I have a sneaking suspicion this is what's going to happen. I tried to look this up, and there was one that did get taken out, but it was out of a head and not a combo, making it completely irrelevant in this situation. Just like the other amp, I'm going to talk about this one for a little bit. So I was working at the music store at the time. This came in as a trade, and I believe it was some sort of Boss digital amp product. The guy was fine with giving up his whatever little tubes that are actually in here for something even sort of more digital. Now, I had read up on this through, I think, Andertons and Chapman at the time, back when YouTube was still new and people were watching cat videos, but guitar was starting to make a scene. These had just come out, and the new have big tones and incredibly low volume was a thing, still a thing. In fact, it's even more of a thing now. But this and the orange Tiny Terra lunchbox head, I think about a year later or maybe at the same time, sort of revitalized that. As you see right now on the screen, there's a heck of a lot of options. And this is one of the reasons why I don't begrudge the speaker for sounding the way it is, as this amp in 2023 money, I think is still only about $750. It's about 500, $499 maybe, back in 2008. This came in 2009. So I'm very interested to see what the component layout looks like, and I'm actually hoping I do have one of the early ones. Because despite all of what I have here, I actually use this a lot. I don't just go by price point. I've played it all from several Squires to a PRS 10 top signed by Paul. And it just comes down to what do you drive with and what works for you. Take away the price tag and take away people's looks at it, and it's really hard to tell just by the sound of it now what the price is. So I've taken the 6 wood screws out, and it's not budging at all. I took this screw out just to see if I could kind of get a glimpse of what's going on, and in there it goes straight into the chassis, but then the screws are then not long enough to go back into the wood, so that's not the issue. So I'm going to take off the grill first, and then I'm going to see if I can maybe kind of fish underneath and just see what's attached to. It is not budging at all. So it's not like it's friction stuck. Things are still being attached to it. And it's not these either, because those screws are only about that big. It's literally for the corners. Oh, I might have to Google this one. Okay, so I've got this now upside down and the panel off. I don't know if the camera will be able to see in. No, that's okay. I can barely see in, other than the dust that is in there. So I'm still trying to find screws to be able to take the sides, see if the chassis is out. Because clearly you can see how close that speaker is. I mean, there's no taking the box out without this. No. Chassis got to come out, and we still don't know. Okay, so we have something. I basically pulled it to an inch of its life, and it wanted to now come out. So it is the 6 only, like I had thought. I did look it up on the gear page and read several ones because, well, it's the gear page just to verify. But yeah, no, just a lot of force on some of them. And again, if this is an early, 2008, 2009, well, that's now almost 15 years. Take her open. Let's take a look. See if I got the good chassis. Okay, so here is the original speaker. Blackbird 50 watt rating, 16 ohms. So everything that's being replaced from the Vox to this is 16 ohms. That's sort of on purpose. That way I know I didn't have to worry about whether the amp can take it or not. So I'm going to get this out. It should be very easy to get that out and then get the Greenback in. Now, as far as chassis here, it doesn't have the retainer on the 12AX7 that the early ones do. And I don't know if I want to open this up. Really take a look, but so far everything works. Like I said, this has a very unique sound that I've yet to find a replacement for. And I don't want to buy a new one. So I want to keep this going as long as possible, but I want to make sure it's fixable as well. Oh well. Okay, so I have verified. I don't know if it'll come up, but you see those tiny little, it looks like silver. Come on, focus. Focus. There we go. See those 4 sort of silver little bits, 1, 2, and then 3, 4 to the right of them. So that is microcircuitry, and so this is not necessarily the one that I was hoping for. However, this is definitely the more common of the variety. So very, very hard to fix if something goes bad with it, because again, good luck trying to unsolder those tiny, 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 tiny little tabs. But given the price I've paid for it and the 15 years I've had it, it's more than paid for itself. In worst case scenario, it could always just still hold that greenback as an extra cap. Okay, so the speaker's out, and just like last time, we're just going to take a look at both. So this, again, is going to be the greenback that's going to go in with the thick doping on the side, but fairly thin paper cone, and what looks like a cork thin gasket. Over to the Blackbird 50, we have much thicker gasket on here. Not cork, almost feels synthetic of some type. Doping is about the same. Paper looks thicker, but the main difference, and people are going to be like, well, that shouldn't matter, but it does. If you take a look, so the lead ends there that have been tied up. You know, like goopy that is. Over in the higher end Celestion, it's much less prominent. Well, remember, a speaker doesn't just push air back and forth, it also swirls it around. And when you have things like this, it really can mess with the high end. Remember, I mean, distorted guitar is nothing more than a pink noise generator. And you're basically using the speaker to tune that. All right, this one out, this one in. Okay, we have it back up on the bench, stool. Now, I wanted to point this out, but I couldn't do it with the black speaker and the black cap. But one of the reasons why this amp can sound boxy, and you might not have it go away with almost any speaker, is look at the size dimensions. The box is almost the same size as the speaker itself from height-wise. Width-wise, it's a little wider. But if you put any of these speakers in a bigger box, you will get a bigger sound. Very similar to an acoustic guitar. So, nice thing is the Greenback doesn't generate a lot of bass. It's low power, it's only 25 watts, it's not 50. And it's got a medium-sized magnet, not a heavy one. So the big sort of pit bull in a small cage scenario might not come across, right? If you can't make the cage bigger, shrink down the dog. And just like that, I think we're going to have to stop here, because that Blackbird is not a true 12-inch. Or if it is, the basket frame is not as big, because holes don't line up. We are ever so close. Ever so close. And I can already hear the comment section, well, just drill new holes. Well, I would, but in between the grill and the wood, there's metal inserts in there. So if I was to drill right next to it and then sort of use, I don't know, wood screws or something, it's almost not worth it. Especially considering this amp has a speaker out. So I can use that. So I guess Blackbird is going to get stuck with, which means that I have got the unused Greenback, to which I do not know what to do with. Wow. Not all videos are successful, but at least all of them you do learn something.